The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 26.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening once again to The Secrets of Star Wars from SQPN, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in Star Wars movies, TV series, and more. And joining me today are Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hi, Father Andrew.
Hello, Dom.
And Andrew Hermes. Hi, Andrew.
Hello, Dom.
And Mike Creevy. Hi, Mike.
Hello there.
So, very good, Mike. A little Obi-Wan going there. So, folks, it has been a long time, and if you're still subscribed to the feed from the last time SQPN had an episode of Secrets of Star Wars, I applaud you. I do know that you're out there. I see the feed being hit by people's feed readers, hoping, waiting, so excited, but perhaps someday you'll get more Star Wars from us, and now's the day. The day has come. We haven't done a regular episode of Secrets of Star Wars for several years now. We've done a few when certain of the movies have come out, but it's been a while. And, of course, why are we starting a new Secrets of Star Wars up again? It's because Disney Plus is here. The Mandalorian is about to drop in our feeds on our Disney Plus subscriptions. We've got The Rise of Skywalker coming, and we've got a whole bunch of new Star Wars TV series coming. It is a golden age, once again, of Star Wars, and it's time to start talking about it again. So now the thing is I'm not going to be a part of this podcast. I've got so many other projects I'm working on. I would love to talk about Star Wars with everyone, and I may pop in here and there as available and as warranted. But our regular podcast panel is going to be hosted by none other than Father Andrew Kinstetter. So Father Andrew is known as online in some places as Father Fett, but I wanted to just first start with you, Father Andrew. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to the audience, and a little bit about your Star Wars background.
Sure, absolutely. So my name, of course, is Father Andrew Kinstetter, and I hail from the great state of Wyoming. So I newly ordained as of 2016. So I'm currently assigned as the associate pastor in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Been here for a couple years, so I don't know yet what's happening in the future. But no matter what, I'm going to keep up with doing this podcast. So it doesn't matter where I wind up. That's the beautiful thing about this. So it's been just a phenomenal sort of journey in my life growing up in Wyoming. I went to Conception Seminary College in Missouri for my philosophy, and St. John Vianney Theological Seminary in Denver for my 4 years of theology, ordained here at the Cathedral of St. Mary in 2016. So if you want to know more about that, just contact me. I'm happy to share my story a little bit more than what's allotted on the podcast here. My Star Wars journey, more or less, I would point to it starting back in 2002. So if you're at all aware of what date that would have been the release of Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I'm already getting some faces from the other panelists here. I remember before that actually watching The Empire Strikes Back with my dad, and Yoda kind of freaked me out as a kid. So I wasn't too keen on it at that point. But for some reason, when Attack of the Clones hit theaters, I was in junior high, and it just struck a chord with me. My older brother and I'm sure the family went to go see it. My older brother was the Trekkie of the family, and so Star Wars sort of became my thing. And I really appreciated having something to kind of distance myself from my brother in that realm and have for my own. And so Attack of the Clones just resonated with me. And then from there, I jumped into all the novels and loved the novels. They were sort of some of my best friends, so to speak, going through high school. We had a mandatory 15 minutes of reading every weekday at school. And so Star Wars was my go-to for that. So just kind of kept up with all things Star Wars through the Disney purchasing of Lucasfilm and all of that. And I guess in recent years, what's been super cool about that is I've gone to a few different comic conventions. And so in Denver back in 2016, so I was ordained a priest at that point, I got to meet Daniel Logan, Jonas Suotamo, and Ray Park.
Cool.
Young Boba Fett, Chewbacca, the modern Chewbacca, and Darth Maul, respectively. And so that experience was just a really, really fun thing for me to do. This past summer, I went to FanX in Salt Lake and got to meet Hayden Christensen and Ian McDiarmid. So
Nice.
just a really super cool thing to do and totally geeking out about it. I was, of course, dressed in my clerics and got to just interact with them. And that was a lot of fun. And meeting Daniel Logan back in 2016 spurred this whole Father Fett thing. I've always really appreciated and liked the character of Jango Fett. Not necessarily for his moral code, but as a kid, I loved his armor and I thought he had a really sweet look. And so meeting Daniel Logan and discovering a whole community of, ironically enough, Instagrammers who are part of a kind of a Fett cosplay building community. I got involved with them and created the persona of Father Fett, and I actually have my own Jango Fett helmet. I'm showing it off on the camera here.
That's awesome.
Helmet. Nice.
So yeah, Daniel Logan kind of inspired that, and so I am on Instagram at Father Fett, and so I post all my geeky priestly side of life. So
awesome.
That's sort of me in a nutshell where I'm at. I'm super excited, obviously, for The Mandalorian. I'm super excited to be discussing it with you guys and seeing where this show goes. So it's
awesome.
Good to be here.
So do you have? So we know your favorite character, obviously.
Yep.
Are you? What's your favorite movie or show from Star Wars?
Okay, so I have to say Attack of the Clones for fairly obvious reasons.
Yep.
After getting into the movies a little bit more, I did discover and really appreciate the original trilogy. So The Empire Strikes Back is also, I know it's cliche, but it's definitely one of my top picks, and Han Solo is another one of my favorite characters. So to see his growth through that is phenomenal for me.
And do you have a favorite thing about Star Wars, something about Star Wars that makes you of the fan that you are, something, a concept or an idea or something that is a part of the meaning of Star Wars for you?
Well, I think for me, a lot of it has to go back to the whole Jedi versus Sith. I think there's a lot of analogies to be made between the Jedi and priesthood.
Yeah.
And so I really love, of course, fundamentally the story of good versus evil.
Right.
And how it's played out kind of in this space opera. And I really do like to kind of look at even the Jedi, though, and point out where maybe their philosophy is not quite in line with Catholic thought.
Okay.
And so definitely that whole story. And even beyond that, I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but what I love about Star Wars is the community. And so even the community that I've been involved with on Instagram and you guys as well has just been very uplifting, and I think is really, really, really cool. Just a brief kind of story with that. There was one of the Fett cosplayers who ended up committing suicide about a year ago. And so to experience the rally of support that the Instagram community had around his fiancée was really cool to be a part of and to be able to pray with. And a number of them even contacted me because they knew that I was a priest, and so they could kind of talk about it and process. And and ask those questions that maybe they wouldn't ask otherwise. So the community aspect beyond the film franchise or the video games and the toys and all of that is just really, I mean, what keeps this whole thing driving and what I love to be a part of.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's a word of validation for the fact that, to be a priest in public who's also a geek, a fan. I mean, that's really what we're about with SQPN, is to say that these things are compatible and that there's a reason why we're out here, looking for the intersection of faith and pop culture. So that's awesome.
Yeah. People seem to forget that priests are completely human too and have normal hobbies. And so it's really fun to go to the opening night of Star Wars and run into people and let them know that I'm just as geeky as they are.
Right. And I have to say, I mean, we can't let it go, without saying that all of this wouldn't have been possible without, the original Star Wars priest, Father Roderick Von Hogan, who started this network, who started this podcast. Still a good friend. He's doing some other things more in the video realm right now. So, and actually he's restarted his, a sort of his talking about Star Wars on his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Father Roderick. So if you want to, check it out, go check it out there. And he gets to go to all the premieres, movie premieres for Star Wars in the Netherlands and all that sort of stuff. So definitely, keep track of Father Roderick. We're still good friends, and I look forward to talking to him about Star Wars again real soon, especially when Rise of Skywalker comes out. So thank you so much, Father Andrew. Let's go to Andrew Hermes. Andrew, tell us a little bit about your background, yourself, and how your Star Wars background.
Yeah, for me, I mean, obviously the original trilogy came out before I was born. So when I got into it, it was really the Phantom Menace was my film. And but I remember I was a fan before that film came out. I watched the trilogy when I was young. My parents, both of them migrated here from Iraq. I'm Chaldean, so they introduced Star Wars to me as the movie they watched before they came to America. They both came, and the Star Wars film came out in '77. For the movie, it was this, it was a worldwide phenomenon. Everyone knew about Star Wars. So I just, from there, watched the original trilogy. Darth, my favorite character. He had big, you see him on, and his voice, James, about him, how menacing he was, and witnessing his redemption at the end was had a real impact on me at an elementary school age, and then in middle school I became friends with all the Star Wars nerds in my class, and we rushed out to see Phantom Menace like everyone else did. And I know, I mean, growing up, I see the flaws in the film and it's not my favorite anymore, but back then it was everything to me. So I've been a fan ever since. I've read some of the novels, and I'm trying to get into the comics now, and especially the Vader comics, which are great. And I love Clone Wars and Rebels. So I can't wait for Disney Plus for the next season of Clone Wars that we've all been waiting for. So that's kind of my background as far as Star Wars is concerned. And like Father, I go to Comic-Con here in San Diego almost every year. So whatever Star Wars things they got going on over here, I'm always lining up for it. And I did get my tickets for Star Wars Celebration next year.
So did I.
Yeah. Nice.
We'll have a podcast meet up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be my first time. It's going to be in Anaheim, so it's not too far from me. So, and I was lucky enough to get tickets. So I'm really excited for that. And yeah, if you're going to ask who my favorite character is, I think ultimately it is Darth Vader, like I said, for all those reasons. And he's the most recognizable character. He even if he's not in a movie, his presence is felt,
right,
throughout. And I think that sequence in Rogue One at the end,
yes.
We finally get to see how badass he is.
Yes.
So hopefully going forward, maybe in the Obi-Wan series or some other. I'm sure we're not going to see the last of Darth Vader. Hopefully we see more of that going forward. And as far as what I like most about Star Wars, what I like most is like how expansive the universe can be. I'm so excited about Mandalorian. I know we're going to get into that, obviously. And it's like you don't have to be fans of just the episodic, films. I mean, for me at least, like I could care less about the movies now. I'm so excited about the shows, that are coming out. Rise of Skywalker, I just hope seals the deal. And I'm very happy that Palpatine's back. Because he's probably second on my list as far as favorite characters. So yeah.
Okay.
That's my take on Star Wars.
Awesome. That's actually one thing we should bring up is and this will kind of be up to the panel to decide amongst yourselves, but one of the things that Father Roderick and I talked about, one of the reasons we actually kind of stopped doing the podcast before Force Awakens came out was we started getting into the realm of spoilers, and we kind of decided we didn't want to get it. Like, we kind of know that Palpatine's, I'm not saying you spoiled it, we know from the trailers that Palpatine is, at least his laugh was in it, so he's probably going to be in the movie. But how much do we discuss spoilers and rumors, and does that affect our enjoyment of the movie? And I'm going to leave it up to the panel, to Father Andrew and the rest of you to figure out how much you want to get into spoilers. I prefer not to. For myself, I prefer to enjoy a movie like that, but that's something to pay attention to, and we'll what we'll make sure is we'll let you know is if we're going to be spoiling something in a podcast, if that's where the panel decides to go, we let you know so we don't ruin it for you. I mean, nobody likes a spoiler, so if that's not something you don't want, we'll let you know ahead of time before we do that. So thank you, Andrew. That's awesome. One of the things
I did forget. I wanted to say that my favorite movie is Return of the Jedi.
Oh, okay.
I know it's not the favorite pick usually, but it is Return of the Jedi because I do think Ewoks rule. And the Battle of Endor is like the best battle in all the movies.
Awesome. I was going to remark that I feel like this is a passing of the generation. This is like Luke handing things off to Rey in Last Jedi, because I'm of the old school. I saw A New Hope in the theaters when I was a kid, when I was 10 years old, or 9 years old. So I come at this from that perspective, and it was in the great wasteland of 1983 to 1999, where there was no new Star Wars but the books that we eventually got, and that sort of thing. So it's awesome to hear how you guys come to your Star Wars fandom, and how cool it can be to kind of jump into the middle of it, and you've got this rich world that already exists that you can, okay, I've seen this movie, now what have I missed? Oh, I can go check that out, and you've got all of that to go back to, and that's really kind of neat to see that. And I like the idea that we've got this young energy in this podcast. This is not a bunch of old guys reminiscing about how Star Wars used to be better before they ruined it. It's not going to be anything like that. This is going to be a fan podcast, so really excited to see that. Mike, I have not forgotten you. Why don't you tell us about your Star Wars background and a little bit about yourself?
Well, and I have to say, Dom, are you basically saying what Yoda said, that you are what we grow beyond?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because I'm thinking about this. Like, I'm just loving hearing your guys' stories, because I think I'm sort of in between a tad, not totally, because when I was born, one of the first date that my parents went on when they could finally get a babysitter was to go to Return of the Jedi. So
wow.
They were in the Army. I was born in Germany. They're both from Pennsylvania. I live in Pennsylvania now. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but that they happened to meet in the Army in Germany, of all places. So it was one of those things where, like, at the time, like the new releases would finally make it to the military posts like a few months later. So I think if I remember correctly, Return of the Jedi came out like spring of '83.
May.
So it was finally into sort of the like USO theaters and stuff like that, you know, in like the fall of '83. I was born in right the first week of January 1984. So, you know, so I have memories of growing up just as long as I can remember being, you know, having access to Star Wars on TV, like the original trilogy, Star Wars action figures, you know, the Kenner action figures and all that kind of stuff. And like the huge wave of that initial like merchandising, you know, of the original trilogy. So, you know, my brothers and I grew up just always loving it. And we knew the movies like the back of our hands. You know, we just totally had them memorized and everything. So I still remember being like, I don't know, like 9 or 10 and hearing rumors that like someday George Lucas was going to make more movies. And I still remember thinking like, oh man, that would be so awesome, you know? And when I was in middle school was when Decipher started releasing the Star Wars customizable card game. And it was right on the wake of like Magic the Gathering, which I never got into. But, you know, my friends and I were collecting these cards. And honestly, a lot of my initial just sort of like encyclopedic sort of knowledge, not that I have that compared to a lot of people, but, you know, what I know, like a lot of the details I know really came about through those cards. And it's so funny how even to this day, I'll watch the original trilogy and like someone will say something and I'll be like, yeah, that was a card. Or like, that was an effect. Oh no, that was, you know, so like I'll have this still stuck in my head like all these years later. And then the big sort of fun movie experience for us was when they, say what you will about the special edition. I've got my issues with some of them for sure, but the first movie my brother and I ever went to kind of on our own was when they re-released the special edition in 97, I think it was, for the 20th anniversary. So I was 13, my brother was 10. My dad dropped us off at the theater. You know, we got to go in, and for the first time ever, I'll never forget sitting there and, you know, you see this, you know, see Star Wars, you know, the scroll and everything in the theater. And I think, you know, even though I knew the movies so well at that point, because I was already such a fan, that was really, I think for me, it must have felt what it felt for people, you know, seeing it for the first time in theaters. You know, like it was just a real, like, hey, I'm finally seeing it up here on the big screen. So we were, of course, thrilled when episode 1 came out, all the prequels. I think episode 3 came out like my junior year of college. So it was really like end of high school into college, you know, like I was getting my Star Wars fix, so to speak, in the theaters with the prequels. So that was awesome. And then, you know, it kind of dwindled a tad just because there wasn't new stuff coming out. I was in the Army for several years, and I didn't really follow Clone Wars when it came out. I knew what was going on, but didn't really have access to it. And so it was funny, the sort of resurgence, I guess, of all this was at the end of my Army career. And so at this point, I'm 30, you know, and we're coming back from a NATO exercise in 2014 from France. And I'll never forget, I'm on my phone and just checking some headlines and stuff. And there's all this stuff. This is 2014. And there's all this news about, you know, Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm, and there's going to be new Star Wars content. And I'm just like, wait, well, hold on a minute. Like, say what you will about Disney or Disney movies. I'm like, these guys know how to, you know, acquire content. They've been doing it for years. This is, of course, long before we know that they're going for Disney Plus, you know, and Marvel, you know, has really started to take off at that point. And so I was just really excited. And, you know, that first trailer for Force Awakens, you know, like a year in advance, I have a hard time being patient for a new release.
Yeah.
So, and I you know, I won't share any spoilers here, but I knew too much going into Force Awakens, and I regretted that. So I was much better with The Last Jedi. It really kind of, you know, going on sort of spoiler kind of darkness for a few months beforehand. And I must say I'm doing well this time with, you know, I really don't want to ruin episode 9. So I've been a lifelong fan, and I feel like I've been able to be there in kind of a unique way, you know, like through all these different phases, you know, just not quite the very first one, you know. Awesome. Just on the tail end of that. So that's kind of my background.
Fantastic. So did you tell us your favorite movie?
You know, it's funny. It's hard to pick because I think because it's been there my whole life, I've gone through phases. But I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but I'm doing my rewatch now, and I just the Empire Strikes Back is just so, like, the pacing is so great. Like, everything about it is just so great from beginning to end. But I know a lot of people like to knock The Last Jedi. I wouldn't quite say that's my favorite, but there's I'm a high school theology teacher. I teach 9th grade theology, and I'll never forget after we saw it in the theater. This was just a few years ago, and my fellow theology teacher and I at the school I was teaching at the time, we were just like, I don't know what happened. We didn't see it together. We could not stop all day making connections that I haven't heard most people make, quite frankly. Yeah. Connections to like the Old Testament, you know, and that's like a conversation maybe for another time. But there's a lot, you know. I definitely have some criticisms with it. I think it kind of drags in some places, but there's a lot of interesting connections with the whole. I think like the Luke's spiritual struggle. You know, many people criticize that, and you know, fair enough. But you know, I remember seeing it and thinking to myself, like I'd spent all these years, like I think most people, just sort of following the expanded universe and just kind of having this idea of like Luke, you know, now he's just set. He's like this
he's
sort
the
of
new
perfect Jedi master.
Yeah.
Right. You know, that's fine. He has conflict and whatever, but you know, he didn't really seem to face anything in the stuff I had read, you know, and I didn't read a lot, but he didn't seem to face that same kind of spiritual torment and that temptation to give it all up and you know, lament and all that kind of stuff. And I thought to myself, I was talking to my seminarian brother about this at the time too, and I said, well, wait a minute. I said, I'm Catholic. I don't believe in once saved, always saved. You know, and
that's right.
I was like, wait a minute, like that's, So for whatever reason, I started kind of seeing it through that lens, and I still do every time I watch it. I'm like, I'm sure that's not quite what J.J. Abrams was going for, you know, right. But there's something to that. So like, I think for me, you know, my overall, like what I really love about Star Wars, I love the reality of it, just kind of being what it is, the cultural impact of it. Its presence really kind of, in, you know, my generation, certainly, you know, like that, you know, kind of growing up with that. And I love the Stranger Things kind of nostalgia, you know, seeing that, you know, kind of in the background with the kids in that show, very similar to me. They're a little older than me in that, but I think the more I've grown in my faith and the more that really takes, you know, center stage in my life. I mean, it's not uncommon for me to make 2 or 3 Star Wars connections at least, like per week.
Nice.
In my theology class, you know, where I do not plan it, and I hesitate before I say it because I'm like, oh man, this is going to be a big nerd moment. But I'm sorry, guys. I was like, it's good, you know, and bam, there it is. So that's always fun. It always comes up.
Always comes back to Star Wars.
It does.
You know, when you talk about like favorite movie, and I'm gonna go a little off the, you know, of what other people say. I really liked Rogue One. I mean, yeah. The more I watch it, the more I like it. Yeah. I liked Solo, and the more I watch it, the more I like it. And and I gotta say, what's the actor? Donald Glover played the Lando. Yeah. His Lando might be the best, like the best character. Like he's so super cool. I mean, he's so awesome. And of course, Billy Dee was the original, but I'm one of those people who love Star Wars, and I love them all, you know, in different ways, like my children. Like I love all my children, and just different from each other. Before I go on, I do want to. We have 2 other panelists that I'm gonna introduce. The first one is Angela Cialana. She's going to be joining us. They both couldn't be here today, but I do want to. Angela prepared a recording for us, so I'm going to play that now, and she can introduce herself and her Star Wars. So why don't you give that a listen?
Hey everybody, this is Angela Cialana, and I'm coming to you from a galaxy far, far away in Texas. I am so excited to be talking Star Wars with you again. I was able to be a panelist on The Secrets of John Williams, and of course we talked about Star Wars at that time. So now we're really going to dive into the story, and I have loved Star Wars ever since I was a little girl, and my dad shared Return of the Jedi with me, and then we watched A New Hope, and Obi-Wan Kenobi became my favorite character of anything of all time, and actually one of my favorite quotes and kind of a personal motto is from him, and that is patience, use the Force, think. My second favorite character I have to give a shout out to is Ahsoka Tano, and you know, I've really enjoyed the canon novels. I've enjoyed the animated series. I really enjoyed Rebels and getting more into the Mandalorian culture. in that show. So I'm looking forward to seeing if there is any tie-in between Rebels and The Mandalorian. But my favorite property will always be the films. And the reason I love Star Wars, besides all the cool, vehicles, planets, cultures, lightsaber fights, is definitely just the way that Star Wars inspires us to live with courage and to be better people, to make this galaxy the best it can be. And just the spiritual tie-ins also that I get with the Force and allowing the Force to flow through you. So may the Force be with you, and look forward to talking to you guys soon.
That's awesome. Thank you, Angela. She says something interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing whether we might see a live-action Sabine Wren from Star Wars Rebels in The Mandalorian, or something connected to her. I would love
Filoni
to see it.
Is involved in both, so
yes, he is. He is.
Yes.
So that was Angela, and I'm also going to introduce Thomas Sanjurjo. He's going to be joining us as well, and so here's Thomas introducing himself to you.
Hi, my name's Thomas Sanjurjo, and I have been a Star Wars fan since before I even knew what Star Wars was. My parents got me a Rancor and Luke Skywalker toy from a garage sale before I had even seen the movies, and they were two of my favorite toys, which made seeing the movies all that much more awesome. My favorite Star Wars character is incredibly hard to pick. I love so many of them, but if I have to go with one, it's Han Solo. Being the guy that is not a Jedi in the midst of all that Jedi madness has to be an amazing thing. My favorite properties are the first three movies, the real three movies of Star Wars. And I think that my favorite quote is, I've got to go with Yoda's, try not, do, or do not. There is no try. My favorite thing about Star Wars ties into that. I think that Star Wars is a great way for us to tell moralistic stories, but actually have fun while we're doing it. I look forward to talking more about Star Wars with you guys, and look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks.
So we have this great podcast panel who have very diverse opinions about Star Wars, and and I love that. I love that fact. So it's going to be a lot of fun to listen to this podcast as a listener for myself, and I'm going to enjoy it a lot. And I may butt into the conversation at some point because I can't restrain myself. But this is going to be a lot of fun. So I just want to kind of talk to the listeners about what they can expect from the show. So it's going to come out weekly, at least through the first run of The Mandalorian, and then after that, we intend to be weekly after that. But we're gonna cover The Mandalorian. It starts right after, as we record this. It starts tomorrow, so we'll be talking about that, or you'll be talking about that. And then when Rise of Skywalker comes out, well, there'll be an episode about that, of course. We may actually have several different episodes, because I might have something that I'm going to do with Father Chip Hines, where we do the Coffee and Cinema podcast, where we go to a movie, and as we come out, we talk about it, like in the car afterward, first impressions. So we have to. Father Chip and I are also huge Star Wars fans, so we have to do it too. So you'll have that sort of stuff. And then after The Mandalorian is done, and before the Cassian Andor series, or the Obi-Wan series, or the other new series, that'll be up to the panel to decide, where to go from there, whether it's going to be talking about the movies that have already come out, talk about Clone Wars and Rebels and Resistance and books and comic books and toys, whatever it is you guys want to talk about. That's what will be coming out. So any last words before we wrap this up and get folks ready for our, this is sort of like the preseason here, so ready for the season premiere next week. Any last words that you guys want to share, Father Andrew?
I'm just excited to have fun. I think Thomas made the great point that this is a way to tell moralistic stories and have fun. So I mean, that's really what's drawing us here is we're geeky, but this is a fun way to share it. Being in Wyoming, I don't often have a whole lot of. I have a few close friends, but they're not here with me in Cheyenne that I can geek out about with. So I am so excited to be able to geek out with you guys.
Awesome. Andrew, any last comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just emphasize avoid spoilers at all costs. Because I know when it comes to Star Wars, I mean, what's surprising, I don't know if you guys remember the story early on in production of Mandalorian, someone leaked a bunch of stuff from the set. I think there was stuff even stolen from the set, scripts and whatnot. And Star Wars, I mean, I don't know who Disney paid off, but nothing really came out of it, as far as I know. So I would just say, I know when it comes to Star Wars and social media and stuff like that, just try to go in, with little knowledge as possible. Because going into Mandalorian, I know almost nothing about it. I'm just excited about it. And if you're not a Star Wars fan, or you're kind of intimidated by the whole universe of Star Wars, is like, if this is your entry point to Star Wars, that's great. I mean, I know plenty of people that Clone Wars was like the first thing they watched, they got into when it comes to Star Wars. So you don't have to like everything or watch everything. It's totally up to you. So that's all I would have to say.
Awesome. How about you, Mike?
I would just say, a lot of the stuff that I focus on in a lot of my kind of side work deals with wonder and awe, and really, I mean, one of my biggest enemies is reductionism. And that's a whole other conversation. And I talk to my students about that, and I write on that and do some different, podcasts and stuff about that. And I really see, all the kind of fancy terminology aside, I come back, I look at the shows that I come back to, the things that bring me joy and wonder. And it's not, I wouldn't quite just say flat out escapism, as if it makes me sort of avoid my problems or something like that. I think Angela was dead on, and Thomas, and all of us here tonight talking about this importance of, here's this sort of, fun kind of, fantasy environment that we can kind of keep going back to. It's a well that never seems to exhaust itself, even if sometimes maybe the water tastes a little better sometimes than others, but it's reliable, and it always feels like home. And the last thing I was just going to say was, this me being on this podcast, being a panelist here, it's to me, I feel almost like an ancillary character like Tyree or Bosk or, somebody that the nerds have heard of, who's somehow just wandered into the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. And it's a little bit like, wait a minute, why? I don't know if I really belong here, but I truly, I'm very excited to be on here, really honored, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Very good. So, guys, I think that Disney has just dropped a special look about The Mandalorian on YouTube. So I want to wrap this up and go check that out.
Yes.
When I do that, I just want to say to the audience, to the listener, what are you looking forward to in Star Wars in general, but also from this podcast? What do you hope to hear on Secrets of Star Wars? And because this is your show too, you're a participant. We want to hear from you. We want to play your feedback or read it on the recording, because this show isn't, we might get together and talk about Star Wars on our own anyway, but it's even better when there's a bigger community of people enjoying it. So we want to hear from you. You can communicate with us, comment on the show at sqpn.com/Star Wars, or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or you can send an email to starwars@sqpn.com. If you are listening to this in some other way than having been a subscriber before, if you want to subscribe, you can find this podcast at Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, pretty much everywhere that you can find podcasts. We try to make them available everywhere. We'll also post them on our SQPN YouTube channel, where you'll be able to listen to it there. It's an audio-only recording, so it'll be a static image, but you'll be able to listen to us. And so just, try to get the show however you can, and we really appreciate you subscribing and listening to the show. So we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the first episode of The Mandalorian. Until then...
I assume we're doing the first 2 episodes, correct?
Right, because by the time this rolls out, there'll have been 2 episodes.
Tomorrow release and Friday release of the show.
Right,
so,
that's right. Very
so
good.
watch
Thank
the
you
first 2 episodes before you listen to this podcast.
Right. No spoilers. So until then, Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Mike Creevy, thank you as well.
My pleasure.
Andrew Hermes, thank you too.
May the force be with you.
And I'd also like to thank Angela Cialana and Thomas Senherho as well. And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on Star Quest, and may the force be with you.
And with your spirit, yeah, that's
I was waiting for that.
I'm resisting it.